Merry meet lovely people, it is Nina. You are watching Fairychamber channel and time to continue with the fairy series, and today's fairy is the Blue Fairy. And I think some of you might know Blue Fairy from Pinocchio at least, or from Once Upon a Time. The Blue Fairy, her origins, they come from the ancient goddess cults. The most recent effects that have blended into the story of the Blue Fairy, they came from Middle Ages and from different religious characters like the Virgin Mary, Shekinah from Judaism, and Lady of Guadalupe from Mexico. So all these kind of religious characters who are associated with the color blue. And these Abrahamic religions, they were introduced to the public more and more. The church fathers, when they wanted to convert people, many of the pagan goddesses, they were transformed or tried to be transformed to be Virgin Mary. This happened to hundreds of thousands of goddesses around the world. For example, in Finland, Mielikki, the forest goddess, when Christianity arrived to Finland, first it was Catholicism and later on Lutheranism. Mielikki, if she wore the blue cape, she became the Metsä Maria, the Forest Mary. And then if she wore green cape or brown cape, that were her original colors, because she is the forest goddess, then she remained as the pagan goddess. But with the blue cape, she became the Christian goddess. Can you say a Christian goddess? I'm going to use that word now. Anyway, the whole mythology behind Blue Fairy is, I think, in the fairy tale literature, that's where her character is based. It is based on those religious goddesses. Some of these most famous ones were Isis from ancient Egypt, and her color was also blue. She was very much associated with blue, and those of you who have fascination towards ancient Egypt, this kind of blue, especially, maybe a bit darker than this, that's the royal color and the color of the higher spirit in Egyptian folklore, in Egyptian magic. But then in general, in Western countries and in countless other countries, blue is color of serenity. It is the color of purification because it is the color of water and the sky, and it is also color of high spirituality. So this is why so many goddesses around the world are connected with the color of blue, and so many religious figures as well, because it is somewhat a neutral color for many. This is also why Virgin Mary is so heavily associated with the color blue. But anyway, this is also why the Blue Fairy is the Blue Fairy. I quite recently made a video about the fairy tale origins of Sleeping Beauty, the fairy tale, and it has some creepy origins. But anyway, in that particular video I talked a little bit about the fairies and different fairy groups and those special fairies in that particular fairy tale. You might want to check that video if you are interested to understand more about the fairy lore. Anyway, the different fairies, they are associated with different colors. So fairies, depending what kind of fairies you are talking about, like in this case we are talking about somewhat a flower fairies, a woman with wings, and flower fairies especially, they are connected to different colors. And fairies in general, at least to me, they mean nature spirits. And fairy, it can also mean just simply an invisible spirit. A fairy can be related to actions of humans as well. They can be related to actions of animals. everything that is about life and everything that's happening. So the blue fairy especially is connected to humans and the human behavior. Then, for example, the fairy who wears green color, they are connected to the forest and taking care of the flowers and so on. The fairy who wears the red color, they are usually more earthy. They are connected to more earthy things, when the blue color fairy is more connected to the spiritual, and they are both connected to the matters of heart, and the red fairies especially the matters of love and such things. So all these kind of color associations, they are also connected with the fairies that have those qualities that they represent, the same qualities that the color represents. And in that sense, the fairy who is left with the black color, traditionally in the fairy tales she has been demonized heavily, because within Europe black has been color of misfortune and death and all kinds of weird things. And it's not completely black and white. I mean, like, before people started to wear white wedding dresses, at least in Finland people actually wore black when they got married. Actually, the white wedding dress, that was first time worn by the Queen Victoria when she got married in the 19th century. She's the one who started the fashion of white wedding dresses. And before that wedding dress, it could be any color. And if you go to China, they wear red wedding dresses. That's because in China and in Asian countries, red is very lucky color. When in Europe, especially around during Middle Ages, this kind of bright red, it was very, very suspicious color and connected to the devil and all kinds of weird things. And anyway, I'm getting very off topic here. So the blue fairy was obviously connected with the color blue, and blue fairy, you can find that from different fairy tales, mostly as a fairy tale character. Maybe one of these little fairy tale groups or fairy godmothers. Like in Pinocchio, there is a blue fairy who helps Pinocchio on his way to become a real boy. When I was a child, I read Collodi's Pinocchio, and I remember that I absolutely hated that book and it was terrible. And now this spring we had to read it again because in school we had to illustrate scenes from Pinocchio. So I studied illustration in university. And I still hated that book. It's terrible. I hate that. And, well, if you are familiar with my channel, I like to analyze fairy tales a lot, but that's one that it's just freaky. maybe I analyzed one day again for you. Anyway, it was really difficult for me to read that because the whole story, it was written in the 19th century by Collodi, Italian writer. It's not consistent. The book is not consistent because it appeared as a series and he had like long breaks between those stories to come out. So it's not consistent. And in each story Pinocchio gets into trouble. He doesn't have any conscience and he's just like a terrible brat and he's really mean to everyone. And you know Pinocchio story, and it's much more cruel than the Disney version, which is like very, very tame, even though some people think that Disney version is dark. That hasn't even seen darkness compared to the original story of Collodi, okay? So in the Collodi's version, the blue fairy, she's such a weird character. And then in the Disney version, the blue fairy, I don't know, she's just pretty and just grants the wish. That's her job only. And then there's the blue fairy in the Once Upon a Time, and I think she's a very annoying person there as well. I don't know, these pop culture doings of blue fairies, not really my taste, but still I find this mythology very interesting. The way it's connected to different gods and goddesses, and not gods, but goddesses and religious female figures around the world. That's really interesting. Back in the days, there was two types of animals connected to blue fairy. One was a blue dove, and dove, that's very much a Christian symbol as well. You can find that from many fairy tales that have like Christian origins, like many of the Grimm Brothers fairy tales. They have doves landing, and that's the sign of God. Or the blue fairy could have been connected to fireflies that were blue. I have never seen blue fireflies, but then again, we don't have any kind of fireflies in Finland. But I think there might be blue fireflies as well. And pretty much any kind of animals that fly, they have been connected to fairies as long as there has been people talking about fairies. And the color blue, of course, the animal that has the blue color, that can be connected to the blue fairy. And the whole idea of fairy and the tiny flying animal, of course they make sense because they look a little bit similar, but then from different myths around the world you can find this kind of belief of the soul being a butterfly, or a human soul living inside a butterfly or in a bird. Like in Finnish mythology, little birds, they were believed to be souls of dead children, or when a person died, it was believed that their soul would fly away as a butterfly. In Sami mythology and in Baltic mythology, there is different goddesses that are also half little birds or half butterflies. And I think you can find that from many other myths as well around the world, where there is this little fairy-like creature who is a goddess in some cultures. So the whole concept of the blue fairy goes all the way to worshipping different kind of nature deities. So that's the story of the blue fairy. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you soon. Take care and bye!